Today's daf we're going to be learning is Nazir, daf Tet. Today's daf is sponsored by Carol Robinson and Art Gould in memory of Carol's mother, Irma Robinson, Hudabat Moshe Zichrona Lebracha. Today is her 8th year at site. Irma moved from New Haven to Chicago to marry Lou and built a rich life there, including lifelong friends. Work she loved at a nearby high school and active participation, high school library, and active participation in her synagogue. She lived with Alzheimer's for 7 years with dignity and strength, and never forgot Carol or her sisters. She would be very proud of Carol studying daf Yomi. We're going to get started with going backwards. We're going to start again from Mativ Rava. If you remember, we had two questions on Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was the one who made this distinction between animals that are blemished and animals that are not blemished. In our discussion of Ma'ot Stumim Yiplulin Nedavar, which we spent a long time on and we will finish up today, which is, although we will keep getting back to it a little bit, which is unspecified funds if they're not being used for the Nazir. If, let's say, the husband nullifies the wife's vow, unspecified money goes to all sacrifices. Goes to voluntary sacrifices, voluntary burnt offerings, even though there's chatat mixed in, right? But as soon as it's specified, or if it's animals, even if they're unspecified, then already you have to be concerned for the chatat that's mixed in. And then you have to, again, there's a little bit of a debate. Do we then throw all of it in Yam HaMelech? Or if it's animals, we have to let the animals die. Or if it's somehow specified, then we can say this is for the chatat, that one dies, but the ones for the ola and the shlamim can be actually brought as voluntary offerings. So now we want to, and what Rav Nachman said is, if you have a blemished animal, though, since it can't be offered as a sacrifice, and the only thing you could do really is sell it, it's basically like money. And then we brought a source that seemed to distinguish between money and animals, and I said animals should include blemished or unblemished. To which we answered, no, really, blemished animals are just like money. And that's why I didn't need to even specify, because it's very clear the only value of blemished animals are that you can sell them and use the money. So therefore, they're included in the word money, and it didn't need to be specified. It's the exact same answer we're going to bring here. But to get there, it's going to take us a very long time because we have a long and complicated braita. And the topic is totally different topic. It just happens to mention in one of the Havaminas, which means one of the hypotheses they're suggesting, you might have thought, blah, blah, blah. They suggest you might have thought it based on the Nazir and based on the distinction between money and animals. That's really why we brought this braita. I'm going to start from the beginning of the braita again and summarize it, and I'm going to share screen. I'm going to show you the study guide today, which will help us to follow all the different sections of this. I kind of simplified it. I know it's in Hebrew, but hopefully that I'll translate and that will help you, or if your Hebrew's good, then even better. But we're going to be able to see it kind of in shorter form, what each part of the braita is referring to. So we're going to start with Mativ Rava, about 15 lines from the bottom of Tav Zayin Amud Bet. Korbano. Okay. The first thing you have to know is that we're darshaning. I brought them today on the sheet. Actually, I should have gotten rid of this pasuk. Okay, Tet, it's here by accident, but anyway, we'll ignore it for right now. We have 4 psukim we're going to darshan, and we're going to darshan them in 5 ways, 5 drashot. The first is, and as I told you, if you look at the section there, you'll see we're talking about all different characters, different types of people, different leaders, different individuals who admit they did something wrong. They realize they did a sin by accident, and then they have to bring hevi et korbano. So in Kaf Gimel it says, and if you hoda alav chatato, you realized that you did a sin. But it shouldn't be admit, it's I realized I did a sin. I didn't realize, let's say, the classic is I ate pelev. I thought it was the shuman, the fat, and it turned out it was the forbidden fat. So you realize, veheviet korbano, and he brings a korban sirizim. The next pasuk is kafchet, where it again, it's talking about someone else, hoda alav asher chatav vevi korbano, siirat izim, tmiman keva al chatato. So we're going to darshan number 1, the word korbano. Korbano means his korban, which is going to be, we're going to learn from here, it has to be very specific, your own korban and not someone else's. And then we're going to darshan later, korbano al chatato, because it says your sacrifice for your sin. We're going to learn something about this al chatato. Then the connection with it to korbano. Then we have another korbano in pasuk 32, lamed bet, and then in lamed hey we have again al chatato. So all these are going to be used to darshan different things. So we're going to repeat again from the beginning. So we review. The first one is telling you you can't take your father's sacrifice. So when we have one drasha that says korbano and not your father's korban, meaning you have to separate your own animal, not your father's animal, you might have thought maybe it's only if your father had done something more severe than you or less severe than you, and you have a different level of obligation. But maybe you would have thought, which in a second we're going to say no, but maybe you would have thought, you would say, if your father was obligated the exact same level of korban, and let's say your father dies, and you're left with the animal he designated, maybe you can use it. Korbano. That's why the second one. So in Pasuk, not only in Pasuk Kaf Gimel does it appear, also in Pasuk Kaf Chet, that teaches you, also you can't be Yotze your father's sacrifice, even if it was the same level. So we basically learned different level of your father's, and then same level of your father's, even you can't. And now we didn't really know whether we were talking about animals or money, but right now they're going to say the first two drashot that we just said must be with animals. And now we're going to need a separate one to teach us if it was money the father separated. And that's where we're going to get into the Nazir. Maybe all that we've discussed before is if your father designated a particular animal for a sacrifice. In other words, both of them, right? Whether it's the same level or different level, it doesn't matter. We already learned in number 1 and number 2 drasha, you can't. And why? Why would we think to distinguish animal and money? Exactly for the reason that we had in our sugya. Because when it comes to a Nazir, we said that the son, if you remember, we learned this, the son can use the father's sacrifice. If the father designated a sacrifice and the father dies, the son can use it. But if the son can say, I'm going to be a Nazir just like he was and bring his sacrifices. However, in what case? Not if the father designated an animal. So since when it comes to Nazir, when we do allow it, and we don't allow it with an animal, for him to use the animals his father separated, then you would say, okay, so maybe in the sin offering that we're talking about here, a totally different topic, but maybe we would take the same logic and say, just when it's an animal, he can't use his father's sacrifice. But maybe, but maybe, and now we want to go to the other extreme and say, maybe ma'ot work, even if it's a different level. Maybe I could come in and my father separated some money for a korban chatat. He did a sin. He ate chaylev, let's say. And I come in and I desecrated Shabbat by accident. And he dies, and I want to take his money and use it for my Shabbat, right? Which is more chamor, more severe. Maybe I can do it. Or the reverse, or the same, either which way. Maybe it works. Why? Because when it comes to Nazir, the son is allowed to take the father's money as long as what? As long as it's not specified. If it was specified already, it's a problem. If it was unspecified, it's okay. So now you might have thought, therefore, maybe here also, the money he set aside for the sin offering, maybe I can use. Talmud lomar, korbano. Now we skip to Pasuk Lamed Bet, where korbano appears for a third time. Again, to tell us, b'korbano yotzei ve'eno yotzei b'korbanav. So now we've covered all possibilities. There's absolutely no way I can use my father's sacrifice. Not if he had an animal, not if it was even the same level of responsibility, the same level of sacrifice we needed to bring, and not if he just designated money. Can't use it at all. We've learned that from 3 mentions of the word korbano. Now they're going to shift gears a little. Same idea, but a little bit different. Because we've done with the father, now we have to think about some other option. You might have said, okay, so we can't, actually you should add the word aviv. We understand you can't take money that my father designated, even if it's the same level. Okay, we've already just established that. But what might you have thought? Aval yotzei bekorban sheifrish la'atzmo min hakala lachamura min chamura lakala. You might have thought, okay, we're in number 4 now, that maybe I could take a sacrifice. Let's say I ate Caleb, okay? I ate the forbidden fats and I desecrated Shabbat. Or I ate the forbidden fats and then I ate blood by accident, okay? That would be 2 at the same level or 2 at a different level. You see, it doesn't really matter. You might have thought that once I already designated, let's say I first ate Caleb and I designated a sacrifice for it. Okay? Now, then I decide for whatever reason, I don't want to use it for that. I want to use it for my other sin. Let's say I sinned for Shabbat, and because it's more severe, I want to give that sacrifice first. And I already have the animal that I set aside. So maybe I can use it for my own, right? This is me. I'm the same owner. I set aside an animal for a sin offering. I just want to use it for a different sin. So now they come and say, Talmud Lomal, right? So that's Yotzei b'korban sheflish la'atzmo. Maybe I could be Yotzei on a sacrifice that I actually separated myself, for myself, right? So again, they point out here, mina kala l'chamura l'mina chamura l'kala. They want to go so far as to say, even if it's a different level. Talmud Lomal. Therefore, it says, Korbano al chatato. Go back to verse 28. He brings his sacrifice. Then it says, Wakain sirati zim tmimanu keba al chatato, for his own sin. That means for whatever sin you designated it, it has to be brought. You can't switch to a different sin. Ad sheyehe korbano l'shum. Some people change it to chatato, until your sacrifice is designated for that particular sin. So that was number 4. So not only can I not use my father's, I can't even use my own animal that I designated for something else. But now they want to suggest one last thing. You can probably guess where this is going. I get it if I designated an animal. Even if it was the same level. Okay, like I ate chelev and I ate dam, right? They're going to give that example in a minute. Or if it's a different level, it doesn't really matter. Right? If I first ate chelev, then I ate blood. Okay, first I ate forbidden fats, then I ate blood. Both are the same level. They're both karet. If I do it intentionally, and I'm going to bring a chatat if I did them accidentally. Or the reverse. This braita likes to bring all the possibilities. Shaharei, now they add in this one other element, which is a little confusing, but we'll explain. Shaharei lo ma'al velo kipel. Okay, what does this mean, lo ma'al velo kipel? What is me'ila? We've seen this many times. It's misuse of consecrated property, right? I take something and I use it instead of for hekdesh, I use it for chulin. Now, in this case, I took an animal that was meant for one sacrifice, and I use it for a different sacrifice. I didn't use it for chulin. Chulin is non-sacred. So therefore, there's no me'ila, because me'ila is only when I use it for chulin, and I basically turn this animal into something that was sanctified to something non-sanctified. Like I use it, let's say the classic is, I have money set aside in my house, and I went to the store and I bought my groceries with it by accident. That would be me'ila. But here you didn't buy groceries. You put it toward, you brought it as a sacrifice in the temple for a different sin. So in this case, there's no me'ila. Now, why is that important? Well, if there's no me'ila, the way me'ila works is like this. It's actually very interesting. It works like this. I took my money and I took it to the store, and I bought with my sanctified money, I bought fruits and vegetables for my house. Now, as soon as I do that, the sanctity leaves, it's effective. Okay, it's kind of like Tmura, where you're not allowed to do it, but it's effective. Me'ila also, it's effective. The kedusha, the sanctity leaves that money. So if that sanctity leaves the money, then already the money is in a different category, right? Now in this case, since there's no me'ila, basically it means that what I did was ineffective. Because when me'ila actually happens, then I've switched something from hekdesh to chulin. In this case, I've taken a sacrifice that was supposed to be for my chatat chelev, and I used it for my chatat dam, right? That I ate blood instead of that I ate forbidden fats. Nothing happened because I didn't move something of sanctity to something without sanctity. Because nothing moved, lo kipel. I obviously don't get atonement for using it for the dam because it wasn't ever meant for the dam and nothing was able to change. I can only change chulin to hekdesh, even though it's kind of counterintuitive. How could I change I could only change the hekdesh, right? If I moved it into chulin, like then it actually switches off. But if nothing switches, then it actually doesn't switch at all. And if it doesn't switch at all, then I don't get atonement. So basically, if I brought this for the dam, I don't get it for the dam. It'll work for my chelev. I will get atonement if I use it for my original. But I won't get atonement for the blood, for the second sin I did, if I try to switch it. So since that's ineffective, I understand why that's why I can't use it, okay? Because it won't work. It can't get switched. Because of the me'ila doesn't kick in, therefore it can't be switched. Aval, but maybe Yotzei b'ma'ot she'ifrish la'atzmo min ha'kala l'kala min ha'chamura l'chamura, or min ha'chamura l'kala min ha'kala l'chamura. They're basically saying all the possibilities. But maybe if I took money, let's say I had money set aside to buy a sacrifice for the chaylev sin, for eating the forbidden fats, and then I switched it. And instead of buying an animal for my chaylev, I bought an animal for my blood sin, or for Shabbat sin. Doesn't matter, either which way. Maybe it would work. Obviously, you know where this is going. It's not going to work. But why do they think maybe it would work? Because if I designated this money for the chaylev, and then I used it to buy an animal for the dam, or al adam ve'vi al chaylev, again, they're just telling you all the possibilities. Maybe it would work then to atone, because what? Now let's think about it. I go to the store to buy an animal. Now, besides, if I go to the store with my sanctified money and I buy with it fruits and vegetables for my house, of course that's me'ilah, because I'm using it for chulin. But even if I go buy an animal for a sacrifice, that's also called me'ilah. Why? Because when I buy that animal for a sacrifice with the money, what happens to the money? The sanctity leaves the money. So in this case, something has switched. And also, I bought the wrong animal here, right? Because I bought the animal for something different. So maybe there, since the money leaves its sanctified state, and I didn't buy with it what I was supposed to buy, so me'ilah kicks in. And maybe once me'ilah kicks in and that money becomes chulin, maybe I can actually switch. When I bought that animal, maybe I can switch the animal. Maybe I'm allowed to do that. And then b'chiper, maybe I could use it to atone for the other sin. To which the Gemara says, Talmud lomar al chatato ad sheyeh korbano l'shem chet'o. Still, I can't do that. Even though theoretically, logically, maybe there's some logic to say I could do it, the answer is no. So again, let's just review our 5 cases, okay, to have it clear. The first 2 relate to taking my father's animal he designated, and we differentiated between the categories. First, we say, if it's on a different level, that's what one verse comes to say. Then the second one is say, even if that's on the same level, I can't use my father's animal that he designated. The third korbano comes to teach us, I can't use money my father designated for a sacrifice, and that goes in both directions, whether it's the same level or different level. Then we tried to say, what about if I took my own animal that I designated for one and I used it for another? And we said, no, korbano al chatato. Your sacrifice has to be designated for this particular sin. But that was only animals, maybe money, and even money that I designated. Even then, there's another pasuk, al chatato, which, by the way, is in verse 35, the chiper alav kohen al chatato. The kohen comes and atones for, again, this particular sin, meaning whatever you designated the money for, that's the sin that you have to buy the animal for that particular sin. So we basically learned all these possibilities are not possibilities. Now, the line we want to go back to, and I brought it here on the sheet, that's going to be important for our purposes, because now we're finally at the end. The Gemara says, Katani mihat behema. Now, where does it say behema? So again, we said here, you might have thought, lo yetzeh b'korban aviv, you might not have, with your father, sacrificed with an animal that he designated. Why? Because ein adam megalech al behemat aviv b'nizirut. Because when it comes to a Nazir, you can't use your father's animal. But what can you use? Ma'ot she'ifrish, right? Because adam megalech al ma'ot aviv b'nizirut. So again, the distinction there is between animal and money. To which the Gemara says, if you go back, katani miyat is usually a phrase used after we've quoted a very long braita, and they want to hone in on which are the words that are important here, because you could see how people kind of got lost in that long braita. And again, the words that aren't even germane to the whole topic. So they're pointing out, however, mihat means however, and katane is, it says in the Tannaitic source. So it says in the Tannaitic source, however, it says, meaning, there is this one point we want to point out, which is behema, the word behema that appears there, which we would assume, my lava filu ba'alat mum, which then says, if your father designated an animal that was even a blemished animal, it can't work, because blemished animals are more like animals. That's what he's saying. To which, that's Rava's question, to which the Gemara answers exactly as we answered to Rav Hamnuna's question. Look, Tmima, No, we're talking about an unblemished animal, to which the Gemara is going to ask, okay, well, aval ba'alat mumai, exactly as we asked on the previous page, to Rav Hamnuna's question. But ba'alat mumai, kistuma damya, you want to say that ba'alat mum is like an undesignated animal because it's a blemished animal, it can't be brought as a sacrifice. You want to say it's like money that's not specified. My area, so why did it bring the more obvious case of ma'ot, of money? It should have brought the less obvious case to show you, even if you bring an unblemished animal, it actually has the law like money. Litne ba'alat mum, it should have said ba'alat mum to teach you that. To which the Gemara says, hachanami, really it's included in ma'ot, it is included there, it's as if it's there. Because what is the only thing you could do with a blemished animal? Lidame is sell it and take the money and use it. Can't bring it as a sacrifice. And therefore, Deme, Haidu Ma'ot, since it's only worth money, right? The value of it is only its value. That means it is Ma'ot. It's basically synonymous with the word money. And that's why it doesn't need to mention it separately. And that's why we have no question from this braita. So we now resolved, and with that we finished in the next Mishnah. We now resolve the two questions on Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman can still fit in with those sources because he views Baal Mum, a Be'ema, Ba'alat Mum, an animal that's blemished, is basically only worth it for its money, and therefore we're going to put it in the category of money. Okay, and therefore it's not missing in these braitas. New Mishnah. Now we want to know at what stage. We're going to have kind of a bit of a funny discussion at the end of this section about wigs, but we'll get to that. The question is, at what stage is the husband allowed to nullify the vow of Nazirut of his wife? So until now we were discussing a husband annuls her vow. He already had designated the sacrifices. It's obviously not too late at that point. And then he can nullify the vow. And then the whole question was, what do we do with either the money he separated or the animals? But now we want to know, let's say they go ahead and they start bringing the sacrifices. So remember, there's 3 sacrifices. According to Tanna here, we're going to have 3 opinions of at what stage in the timeline is he still allowed to nullify her vow, or I would say no longer allowed to nullify her vow. Nizrak aleha echad min adamim. As soon as the blood is sprinkled, you have to remember, the blood being sprinkled on the altar, right? The order is slaughter, catch the blood, walk the blood to the altar, and then sprinkle the blood. That's the final important act. There's more things to go after that, where they burn the parts that have to be burnt on the altar. If it's an ola, they burn the whole thing. If it's a shlamim or something else where some of it gets burnt and the meat gets eaten, then you burn the parts that need to get burnt. They're called the imulim and the chelev. Okay, there's parts and the forbidden fats that we can't eat, or the ones that get burnt on the altar on the animals. Then you get to eat the meat after that. If it's meat you can eat. If it's not, then the whole thing gets burned. But that's less critical. Okay, the critical part is the sprinkling of the blood, and then the atonement is done, right? Like you've fulfilled, that was your main purpose of the sacrifice. So if you already sprinkled the blood of one of the sacrifices, then already eno yachol hafel, he can no longer nullify the vow. And this would mean if he did, then it's ineffective. Okay, so you're asking about he only found out about it, right? It would have to be that he only found out about it on that day, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to nullify. Remember, he has to, it's the day he hears, he can do it. Rabbi Akiva Omer, afilu nishchita alaha acham mikol habehemot eino yachol hafel. Even an earlier stage, just the slaughtering of the animal is enough to say he can no longer nullify. Now we're going to have to understand why this is. Okay, so we'll wait till the Gemara to understand what their debate is about, why they say different stages, and why they both think it has something to do with the sacrifices. What is this referring to? Okay, we're now talking about both Rabbi Akiva and the Tanna Kama, the first unnamed Tanna. We're talking about the sacrifices. There's 2 sets of sacrifices, right? There's one you bring at the end when you finish your nizirut, and there's one you bring in the event that you became impure to a dead body. If it was for being impure to a dead body, of course he can nullify her vow, even if they sprinkled the blood. Because why? Because she's got a whole period of nizirut ahead of her. She's going to be a nizirah at least for 30 days, depending on what kind of vow she took. He could say to her, listen, I don't want a woman who can't drink, who can't eat grapes, who can't go to funerals. This is not good for me. Now remember, the whole thing is he's allowed to nullify vows that are either inoi nefesh. Now you could call this inoi nefesh, suffering for her to not drink wine, like in the words of Rabbi Elazar Kapal, right? We don't like this. This is suffering. Or it's beino lebeina. It's not pleasant for him to be married to a woman who's doing this. It gets in the way of their relationship. He wants to drink wine with his wife nicely over dinner. He can't do that. All sorts of ways it could affect him as well. So again, going back to the beginning of that line, therefore, when we're talking about the sprinkling of the blood or the slaughtering of the animal, that would be only if she's done with her nizigut. We're talking about done with a good nizigut, one that she didn't become impure. We're not talking about those sacrifices. We're talking about the other sacrifices, because at that point, the assumption is, and we'll see this as soon as we get to the Gemara, at that point, you can drink wine. Once you do the sprinkling of the blood, okay, we'll have to deal with the shechita separately, but once you do the sprinkling of the blood of one of the sacrifices, you're already allowed to drink wine. That actually is a subject of debate, which we'll mention as soon as we get to the Gemara. Okay, and our Mishnah, obviously, both opinions in the Mishnah, obviously follow the opinion that as soon as they sprinkle the blood, she's permitted. Okay, we'll get to the continuation of that after the other opinion. Rebbe or Rabbi Meir, it's a debate about what version of the text is right here. So it's either Rebbe or Rabbi Meir. Rebbe is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Omer, Af b'tiglacha tatara yafim. He says, even in the tiglacha tahara, I don't care that she sprinkled the blood, that the Kohen took care of sprinkling the blood of one of the sacrifices, and she can already drink wine. That's irrelevant. He still can nullify the vow. Why? He says, listen, I don't want to be married to a woman who shaves her head. As remember, after the sacrifice, she shaves all her hair off. I don't want a wife whose hair is all shaved. That's unpleasant to be married to a woman like that. That's beino lebeina. It's going to affect my relationship with my wife, to have a bald wife. Like I said, we're going to get to wigs in a little bit. Okay. So the Mishnah says, the Mishnah goes not according to Rabbi Elazar. The Gemara immediately points out there's another opinion here. So even though we already have three opinions, there's another opinion, which is Rabbi Elazar. What does Rabbi Elazar say? To Rabbi Elazar, Ha'amal tiglachat ma'akevet, v'kevan delo gilcha asira b'chamra. Nobody mentioned this at all. So clearly, everyone in our Mishnah doesn't agree with Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says that until she shaves her hair off, she's still forbidden to drink wine. So therefore, as long as she hasn't shaved, doesn't matter how many sacrifices she's brought, she didn't shave yet, she's still forbidden to wine, which means that he can still nullify the vow, because then it's still in the category of things that a husband can nullify the vow of his wife. So, let's say she pushes off shaving, she'll be a Nazir for a while longer. So therefore, he can nullify her vow as long as she hasn't shaved. Okay, so he has a fourth opinion, basically. Right? Since this is called nivul, this is despicable for him to end up have a wife who can't drink wine at all. He's allowed to nullify her vow according to Rabbi Elazar. So Rabbi Elazar has this fourth approach. We're going to skip the next two words because it's likely shouldn't be here. Most of the people take it out. In fact, in my Gemara, it's in parentheses, which means don't read it. And now we're going to start with the top of Amud Bet. And now they're going to explain the machloket first between Rabbi Akiva and the Tanna Kama, the first Tanna, and then we're going to bring in the third opinion of Rabbi Meir and how he disagrees with the two before him. Right, we know already how Rabbi Elazar disagrees with everyone because he has a whole different approach to at what point is she permitted to drink wine. Is it after the sprinkling of the blood? According to everyone in our Mishnah, right? Rabbi Meir doesn't care about when the wine is permitted. Basically, Rabbi Meir assumes the wine is permitted earlier. He has this added issue of the hair being shaved and that's being the issue. So he clearly thinks that already the wine is permitted to her just like the others. He does agree on that point. He just disagrees about the shaving of the hair. He thinks the shaving of the hair would also be an issue that would allow the husband to nullify. Whereas Rabbi Elazar says you don't even need that as the issue because it's the shaving permits the wine, which means as long as you haven't shaved, wine is forbidden. And then it's much easier for Rabbi Elazar to say, well, then it's just a later stage. So now what's with the rabbis and Rabbi Akiva? Tanna didan savar, our Tanna, which basically means the Tanna Kama holds, Kevan de izdirik ala dam, la'alta sharia b'chamra. This is what we said before. As soon as I told you this, even though we didn't see it inside, he holds, very simply, as soon as the blood of one of the sacrifices is sprinkled, as opposed to Rabbi Elazar, who says it's once you shave, he says blood of one of the sacrifices is sprinkled, you're already permitted to drink wine. Once she's permitted to drink wine, he can no longer nullify the vow. And he obviously doesn't agree with Rabbi Meir that the whole shaving the head is a big deal. We'll get to that later, why he thinks that. It's not a big deal. It does seem like a big deal. Vaha lately nivel, and therefore there's no nivel. There's nothing despicable about her at this point. There's no issue. She can drink wine. She could do whatever she wants. She just has to shave her hair, which again, we'll talk about it later, why he doesn't think that that's kind of disgusting, that the wife will have to shave her head. Rabbi Akiva Sava, afilu ishtachitat behema eno yachol lahafel. Even if the animal is slaughtered, which doesn't yet permit the drinking of wine, okay, but the slaughtering of the animal itself will prevent the husband from being able to nullify for a totally different reason. Mishum hefsed kodashim. What does that mean? If I slaughter the animal, and this is going to be a subject of debate in a minute, but right now, let's take it as what he said. If I slaughter this animal, or someone slaughters it, doesn't matter who. Let's say I was in Nazir. Someone goes and slaughters my animal in the temple. And then my husband nullifies my vow. That sacrifice is left to be burnt, not on the altar. You have to take it and destroy it. It's like, there's all sorts of things that are sanctified that we can't, like, for example, why do we burn the challah? When nowadays we take challah, because it's sanctified and we have to burn it. That's what you do with sanctified items you have nothing to do with. You generally burn them or destroy them in some way. So you would have to destroy the whole sacrifice because it's now a sacrifice that's disqualified. Okay? And that's what he says. Once you slaughter it, if the husband cancels the neder, you're going to end up having to waste this kachim. Now, we don't like to waste kachim if we can avoid it. So in this case, there's an easy way to avoid it. Tell the husband, you can no longer nullify, and then we won't have this problem. To which Matkifla Rabbi Zera says, I don't understand. Why does this have to be destroyed? V'amai, why? Lizrok daman shelo lishma v'yatio basar b'achila. You should just sprinkle the blood, not for the sake of this sacrifice, but sprinkle the blood for the sake of something, and that will permit the meat to be eaten. Now, how could he possibly suggest this? Well, he says, Milo Tanya, I'm going to show you where we have a precedent for this. Does it not say in a braita? These are the sacrifices that you bring on Shavuot. Okay, you bring 2 kvasim, 2 sheep. Sheshachatan shelo lishman. You sacrifice them by accident with the wrong intent. Okay, you slaughtered them. Whoever's slaughtering them is in the temple. He's slaughtering these 2 kivsei atzeret for Shavuot, standing on Shavuot holiday. He slaughters them with the intent that they're going to be, I don't know, voluntary burnt offerings, okay, with the wrong intent of sacrifice. This is what's called a korban shelo lishma. It comes up a lot in the Gemara. So in Psachim, we'll see it a lot again in other places. Oh, sheshachatan lifnei zmanan. Or it wasn't yet Shavuot. He did it on the Erev Shavuot by accident. And he had the intent of doing this for Shavuot, but with the wrong day, on the wrong day. Or the day after Shavuot by accident, okay? Or something that was in the wrong time or in the wrong intent. What happens? We don't burn the animal like you would have thought, like we just said. No. Hadam yizarek babasar yachel. You can continue to go ahead. And this is what generally happens with the korban shelo lishma. You're allowed to continue to bring the korban. Once you've slaughtered it and you messed it up, since you slaughtered it, you get to continue bringing it. We don't destroy it. You bring it as if it's that sacrifice that you intended it for. But what don't you do? You didn't fulfill your obligation. So for example, if this was a communal obligation for the kivsei atzeret, they'd have to find 2 more and bring them as sacrifices because you don't fulfill your obligation. But you can go through the motions, basically. You go through the motions as if it was the original sacrifice. In which case, why wouldn't we say the same thing here? Okay, now we're going to continue in that braita. They bring up another point, which is a side point. There's only one exception to this rule. Imaita Shabbat, if it was Shabbat, and then you really have no need for the sacrifice. And not only that, but you can't even eat the meat today. So if I sprinkle the blood, the whole point of sprinkling the blood is to enable eating the meat so that we don't have to waste it and burn the whole thing and say this is, destroyed. But on Shabbat, you can't cook the meat. So you won't be able to eat the meat, which means that if I sprinkle the blood on Shabbat, so that on Motzei Shabbat, let's say, when Shabbat's over, I can cook the meat, that's what you call doing something on Shabbat, not for the purposes of Shabbat. So we don't allow that. So if it was Shabbat lo yizarek, you can't sprinkle the blood because that's basically preparing something for after Shabbat, which is not allowed. But however, im zarak, if you didn't know the halacha and you thought it was okay, Then hurtza, it works. And hurtza laktir imurim la'erev. You're permitted to then take the parts that are supposed to be burnt on the altar and burn them after Shabbat. You obviously can't burn them on Shabbat, but you can burn them after Shabbat. Okay, that's just a side point about Shabbat. But now, Amre. So now what's the answer? Why is Rabbi Akiva saying we're going to have to burn the whole sacrifice when we clearly have this other solution? That when you do something for the wrong reason, which is kind of like this, because in the end it became the wrong reason. It did it for the right reason, but it turned out to be disqualified. Theoretically, should be able to continue just bringing it. It won't work for her Nazir sacrifice anyway. She's not a Nazirah anymore. But it should work that you can actually continue bringing it. So Amre says the following. Now, I didn't tell you the whole story, which is when you have a korban shelo lishma, you can actually continue bringing it, okay? But only if it's a certain type of korban, an ola or a shlam. But what Rabbi Akiva is talking about is, remember, he said, as soon as you slaughter the first one, it's an issue. Now, it's already, right, he can't do it. And because of Efsei Kodashim, it would have to be only if the first one was the chatat. If the first one was the sin offering, this we keep getting back to how strict they were with the sin offering. A sin offering, one of these other halachot that's known, a sin offering that was offered with the wrong reason, shalol lishma, you thought it was a peace offering, or you thought it was a burnt offering, is disqualified entirely. You have to burn it. So therefore, the easy solution is to say, what Rabbi Akiva meant was a chatat was done first. So as soon as you slaughter the chatat, then because of Efsei Kodashim, he can no longer nullify it because there will be nothing to do with this chatat anymore. Kiditnan, I'll already tell you this line is a little tricky because there was a much better line they could have quoted here. This doesn't exactly prove the chatat, but kiditnan and gilach halacha mishloshtan yatsa. What they're trying to say here is it's not exactly the most, this isn't the clearest source they could have brought, but what they're saying is since there's this Mishnah that says that as long as you shaved on one of these sacrifices, meaning one of the sacrifices already can affect that the Isurim are no longer on you. And if the first one you happen to say is the chatat, which is really what we were hoping he was going to prove, but that's not what he proved. But if it's the chatat, then it would end up being Hefsei Kodashim, and that's Rabbi Akiva. So we now have Tanakama basically says it would have to be the sprinkling of the blood, because the sprinkling of the blood is what basically permits the woman to do everything. Once it permits her to do everything, other than that she still has to shave, then once she's permitted to eat everything, then we're going to have it that to do everything, then he can no longer do anything. Rabbi Akiva puts it a little bit earlier at the slaughtering, because he says at the slaughtering already, right, then we're going to destroy this kodashim. If they slaughter the chatat, then that animal is going to be left to be destroyed. We don't want that to happen. That's not a good thing. We don't want to create a scenario where we do this. So we basically forbid the husband from doing it at that point. Now we have to deal with Rebbe or Rabbi Meir. So Bamed Dvarim Amurim, they're now quoting the continuation of the Mishnah. This is all B'tiglach HaTahara, but if it was the Tumah Yafer, because he could say, I don't want her to go through with being a Nazir, Rabbi Meir Omer, Afilu B'tiglach HaTahara Yafer. Rabbi Meir says, even if this is an end of her Nizirut, you could still do it. He doesn't want a woman who shaves her head off. That's really unpleasant to be living with, so he can do it. So Tanakama Amar Lacha, Tanakama will say, he says, it's not so disgusting. Why does the Tanakama not bother by this, or Rabbi Akiva? Because they'll say she can wear a wig. It's not the biggest deal. Rabbi Meir, so why doesn't Rabbi Meir think, or Rebbe, depending on who it is, that she could just wear a wig? Why does he say the husband has the right to nullify the vow? Because it's disgusting. Here's a funny line. It's kind of gross to wear a wig, he says. You know, it's so what's disgusting about it? Some people say she's got other people's hair in her head. You know, that's really not, that's bothersome to the husband. Very interesting discussion about wigs and whether, right, whether this is okay or not. In any case, it's an interesting discussion, and that leads to a very different, right? How you view wearing a wig or not, is it, you know, I think about those women who actually have a custom to shave their heads and wear wigs, right, when they get married. Clearly, Rabbi Meir would have been against that. So anyway, that's an interesting debate, and that's what the Gemara claims anyway, is what's the source of the debate between them. Whether that's true or not is also debatable. Okay, it's anyway cute. New Mishnah. Ha'ish madich et beno b'nazir. We're really just going to touch on this topic today because we're at the end of the daf. We're going to deal with it a lot more tomorrow. A husband can make his son become a nazir. But a woman cannot make, a mother can't make her son into a nazir. Only a father can. First question of the Gemara is going to be, why this distinction? Okay, which you might say, they didn't care. Obviously. No. The Gemara wants to know right away, why can the father do it and not the mother? Because if you remember, Nazirim in general, Isha, it says in the Torah, man or woman. So why couldn't they, if they can be a Nazir themselves, they should be able to make their son a Nazir. So we'll get to that. Ketzad. Now, you would expect Ketzad to tell us how does the father make his son into a Nazir. But the Ketzad is not answering that question. The Ketzad is actually answering a different question, which is, there must be some words missing here, which is, in what case is it not effective that the father makes his son a Nazir? And we already learned this. If he shaved, the kid decides, I'm going to shave, even though I'm a Nazir, right? My father made me a Nazir, I'm against it, I'm shaving. Or the relatives of the kid shaved him, or he protested, or the relatives protested and said, I don't want to do this. So then, now we get, colon, what happens then? Well, so first of all, he's definitely not a Nazir anymore. What happens if already the father designated money or animals? So again, we're going to repeat everything we've been talking about all along, the last number of dapim. If he already designated animals, if it was a chatat, it's left to die. Ha'ola tikrav ola, the burnt offering becomes a burnt offering. The shlamim yikruvu shlamim, v'nechalim liyom echad ve'enam tiunim lechem. The shlamim are brought as shlamim. The ola can be a voluntary ola offering. The shlamim can be a voluntary peace offering, and they're eaten for one day, and they don't need bread. Right? They have the chumrah of the Nazirs shlamim that it can only be eaten for one day and one night, but it doesn't come with the bread offerings that it comes with, that the Nazir offering normally comes with. Hayula ma'ot stumim, if they were unspecified funds, yiplu l'nedava, and they go to voluntary offerings. Ma'ot mefurashim, if they were specified already, then again we know same thing as before. Demei chatat, the money for the chatat goes to Yam HaMelech. Lo nehenim v'lo mo'alim, you can't benefit from them, but there's also no law of me'ilah by them. Demei ola yaviu ola mo'alim by them. Again, I'm not going into all the details because we've learned this already. The ola becomes an ola, and voluntary offerings, and because it's an ola, it's a burnt offering, there's a law of me'ilah, misuse of consecrated property. And the money for the shlamim you use to buy shlamim, and again it has all the criteria that we just said of a shlamim. It gets eaten in one day, and it doesn't have the bread that goes with it. So the first question of the Gemara, and we'll get to, I see you're asking about katan and all that. We'll talk about that soon. What age is this child? All that. But right now, I just want to end with this last question, and then we'll do a review of the daf. And like I said, tomorrow we'll get much more into this topic. Ish in avali shalo, only a father, not a mother. Why? My time. What's the reason? So we'll see the first answer. Rabbi Yochanan Amal halachai bin Nazir. Rabbi Yochanan says his mantra. We keep seeing it. This is a unique halacha by Nazir. It's the same thing he said about the ma'ot stumim. And if you remember, Rish Lakish disagreed with him. Here we're going to quote Rish Lakish with another answer, but that we'll see in tomorrow's daf. So quick review, and like I said, tomorrow we'll get much more into this topic of the father making his child into a Nazir, or the mother. We'll get into laws of chinuch, of teaching children, and maybe it's different for the father and the mother, but we'll get to all that tomorrow. So quick review, we started with this question of Rava on Rav Nachman about the Baal Mum. Is a behemah Baal Mum like money? If so, why in this braita do they not say that? To which they say there was no need to say it. And then we had this very long braita, but the topic had nothing really to do with our topic. It was all about sin offerings, using sin offerings of either your father for yourself or yourself for one sin to another sin. Then we had, and then we split each one into animals and money that was designated. Then we went to the new Mishnah, which was at what stage can the husband nullify the vows of the wife? And we basically saw the Nazir of the wife until what stage? We saw basically four answers. There were three in the Mishnah, and then we had the fourth of Rabbi Eliezer, who basically, Rabbi Eliezer says, right, until the Tiglachat, basically you could do it because but he actually agrees in theory with Rebbe or Rabbi Meir. It's just his reasoning is totally different. He says she's actually still forbidden to wine. Everyone else thinks the wine is when you do the zrikatam, but then they end up with debates about other things. Rabbi Akiva says, well, you'll destroy that korban. And then we said it had to be a chatat, otherwise it doesn't make sense. They would have to be destroyed. You should be able to continue with the process. If it was an ola or shlamim, then we have Rabbi Rabbi Akiva who said it was Hefsei Kodshim, the rabbis who said it was Shrikat Dam, and then we have Rebbe or Rabbi Meir who says you actually have till the tiglacha, till the shaving, because he could still say he doesn't want her to shave, to which we said, what do other people say? She'll just wear a wig. It's not something that's going to cause tension or issues between the husband and wife, because she could wear a wig. Rabbi Meir is going to say wigs are, ugly, and we don't want her to be, the husband could say, I don't want you to wear a wig. And then we ended with this topic of the father, but not the mother, and we don't yet know why. We know one answer, which is just a tradition, and we have an ancient tradition about it. But we'll see another answer about why the father can make his son a Nazir, but the mother cannot make her son a Nazir. And then we talked about this issue that the relatives or the son himself can protest, say, I don't want to do this, and they can basically knock it out. Sounds a little like miyun, right, where she can refuse, the younger daughter. So we'll get to the age and all that. What are we talking about? And then we have, if that happens and they protest, what do you do with either an animal that was designated or the money? And it's exactly the same as we've been discussing for the past few days. That's it for today. We will continue on this tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone.